Okay, so let's talk about working in Germany and more specifically about regulated jobs. So, what are regulated jobs? They are the types of jobs for which the German government has put into place very strict rules, guidelines, and requirements for anyone who wants to work in any of those fields. That is because the government has recognized the fact that the overall health and well-being of individuals and society is impacted by those professions. Examples would be doctors, pilots, nurses, lawyers. So just think of a doctor or a pilot who is not qualified in her or his profession. That would certainly be a danger for people and could cause harm and damage to individuals. So that is why the government wants to make sure that anyone who works in those jobs is actually fully qualified to work in them. How do you get to work in a regulated job? There are two different approaches to this. The first one would be regulated jobs that are academic based. So that means that anyone who wants to work in a profession needs to have gone to university and gotten a degree. An example would be a doctor or a lawyer. For both, you need to attend university for many years and pass, and then get the official government certification that you're actually allowed to work in those professions. So that is one thing, having a university degree and a official government recognition afterwards, which most of the time, if you do it in Germany, is done automatically. The second way is via a vocational qualification. So a vocational qualification is, in contrast to academic, is something that you do not achieve by going to university, but by completing a vocational job training. So this is a vocational training that in Germany takes 2 to 4 years, depending on the job. And then afterwards, you receive your vocational degree. That means that you are trained in this job and you are now allowed to work in that job. A example for that in Germany would be nurses. Nurses are in Germany a vocational qualification, a just an example of other vocational qualifications. So you have an idea of what vocational means in Germany: plumbers, electricians, carpenters, those kinds of more manual based jobs are all vocational jobs. So in many parts of the world, nursing, for example, is an academic job. In Germany, actually, it is a vocational job. So these are the two ways of getting into regulated professions, via academia or via a vocational qualification. If you are from outside of Germany and outside the EU and you want to work in a regulated profession, there are certain things that you need to have in place. The most important one is obviously that you need to get official professional recognition. That means that you will need to present your qualification, all your documents, all your certificates, all your training documents to a officially authorized body within Germany, and there they will look at your profile, your qualifications, and evaluate it against what the German qualification is. So they will say, okay, this is the German qualification. How does your qualification rank and compare to that? And there are different possible outcomes of that evaluation. It can be number one, that they say, yes, your qualification is equal, on par with a German qualification. Therefore, you are allowed to work in Germany without any hesitation, basically. I mean, of course, there's also always then administrative tasks to be done, but in principle, you are allowed to from a qualification basis. Number two, they say you have some skills or the majority of skills needed for that job, but there's still a gap in what you need to do in order to be fully qualified to work in that profession. That could be either you need to have additional training in certain areas where they see weaknesses, or you need to pass an exam in Germany to finally show that you have all the skills. And the third outcome would be to say you do not have the skills necessary, and neither do you have are you close enough to what the qualification is to close the gap by any type of training or exam. So if you are from outside the EU, getting professional recognition is number one. There is a official website by the German government that is Anerkennung in Deutschland. There you can put in your profession that you are interested in working in Germany, and then you have to say in which city you want to work in, and then they will say, okay, in that area of Germany, in that city, this official authorized government body is responsible for evaluating and starting the process of professional recognition for your profession. So if you type in Berlin doctor, they will have the official doctor's chamber of Berlin, who is then responsible for checking your qualifications and actually giving the end result. So that is how it's done. It's pretty straightforward for a government website. It's one of the better ones out there. So there's also a link to it below this video that you can see, or that you can get there quickly, and then you can see what kind of government body is responsible for you. And it also tells you if your profession is regulated or is not regulated. The second thing that you need, and oftentimes it is part of the professional recognition procedure, is German skills. That is also dependent on, sometimes, like I say, it's official, so you need to have a certain skill in order to be able to have professional recognition. For example, doctors need to have a certain level of German to be allowed to work in that field. Other times it is not mandatory, but it's in practice needed to have sufficient German skills to work in your profession in Germany. So we always say B1 is the minimum that you need to speak. It's always better to speak better German because you will have a much better chance of finding a job in Germany if you speak the language than if you didn't. So that is something to keep in mind. That is speaking the language well. There are also some special cases when it comes to regulated jobs in Germany, and the biggest one and the main one is engineering, so working as an engineer in Germany. So engineering, or an engineer, is a regulated job in Germany. That doesn't mean, though, that if you have an engineering degree, that you cannot be employed by a German company. The only thing is that you will not be allowed to call yourself officially an engineer in Germany, and the company is not allowed to give you certain tasks that only an officially recognized engineer can do. So you can find a job without having all the work of having a professional recognition for being an engineer, but you will set a limit on yourself on what you can actually do as an engineer in Germany if you don't get professional recognition. So that is one of the main exception to the rule of working as or working in a regulated field in Germany, where you really don't need a professional recognition, if you understand what I'm meaning. And if you do get through the process of getting professional recognition, you then have to find the ways on how to get into Germany. There are different ways to get into Germany for the purposes of working. So assuming that you got the professional recognition and you found an employer who gave you a job contract, then there are different options on how to get into Germany. If you're from inside the EU, it's pretty straightforward. You can just come to Germany. There's free movement of people within the EU, so you can just come here. There's no visa or anything needed, of course. If you are from outside the EU, you have different visa options. One would be the EU Blue Card. So if you work in the fields of medicine, engineering, mathematics, natural sciences, you need to have a salary of 41,808 euros to be eligible for the EU Blue Card. That means that you are certain that you will get a residence permit in Germany. There's no checking by any more authority if there's a German person qualified for the job and all this hassle. You are automatically given a residence permit for 4 years. There's also a different, a separate topic and video on EU Blue Card, so you can definitely check that out as well. If you do not work in the fields of medicine, natural sciences, mathematics, or engineering, you have to earn a salary of 53,600 euros per year to get the EU Blue Card. So EU Blue Card would be one option, and then just a regular work visa. For that, it would be a bit more complex. The Federal Employment Agency in Germany would evaluate your case and see if there is anyone within Germany or EU more qualified than you to do it. So it requires a bit more work. But regular work visa is a second option. There's also a separate page and video and content on that as well. So if you want to get knowledgeable about regular work visa, you can also check that out. Okay, so let's recap regulated jobs. They are more important for the health and well-being of citizens and society. The government has put in very strict requirements on who can work in those jobs. Examples are doctors, lawyers, nurses, pilots. You will need to have official professional recognition by a German government body in order to work in one of those jobs. On top, you mandatory sometimes have to have certain German skills, but certainly in real terms you need German to find a job. There is an exception, like... Okay, so let's recap regulated jobs. They are the jobs that are more important for the health and well-being of individuals and society. That's why the government has put into place certain requirements for anyone who wants to work in those jobs. Examples would be doctors, lawyers, nurses, or pilots. You will need professional recognition by a German government body in order to be allowed to work in those jobs. To find a job, you would definitely need German skills, at least on a level of B1, sometimes even higher. Sometimes even the recognition requires you to have certain German skills. Engineering is somewhat of an exception sometimes, because you can work as an engineer in Germany without recognition, but you cannot call yourself officially an engineer and your tasks will be limited. If you do find a job and get recognition, you can come as an EU citizen without a visa. If you are from outside the EU, you do need a visa, and there are different options for that. So I hope this gave some insight of what regulated jobs are and how you get into them. And hopefully this helped you and that you will be starting your journey into Germany very soon.